Hi, in today's video I'm going to be talking about something quite personal to me. Basically, the aim of this video is, I don't know, I think I've been going through a few things in my life in terms of really trying to come to terms with who I am as a person. A few months ago I got into a relationship, and I think what that did was it brought to surface a lot of things which I'd basically left in my past, or I thought I'd left in my past basically. And over the past couple of months, coupled with that, I started a new job, a job where I was basically working with the same people day in and day out. I never had a job like that before. Just gonna close the window one sec. Sorry. So I'd had a job basically where I never really, I have a job now where I sort of spend day in and day out with the same people, the same team, the same people who I go to, the same group of friends who I go to lunch with. I never had a job like that. I'd basically been, prior to this, working as a teacher where I was mostly alone, or talking to people more in terms of in a professional capacity, but I was dealing with students mostly. I wasn't working with fellow colleagues on a day-to-day basis, and that has in its own right brought to surface some other neuroses as well. So as a result, I've basically been in a job which has brought to surface certain things which I'd left behind, and also, or rather suppressed, or hadn't known that suppressed, and I simultaneously was in a relationship now which brought to surface a number of things as well. And so as I've been kind of doing this, I've tried to sort of make sense of who I am in these two new scenarios, and I think to an extent all of us maybe do experience this to an extent. I don't know. I'm going to go on a limb that we have, which is that when you sort of graduate from university, you may end up finding yourself in a new situation which you hadn't faced before. Are you going into a work environment? Maybe during university or post-university you've entered a relationship and you don't know how to make sense of it. This is my first proper relationship, first proper job in terms of an office job. And so I've been basically trying to make sense of who I am as a person as I've been going through this. And as a result, I think I'm kind of beginning to get to a place where I'm piecing some things together. So what happened over the past year was that essentially I started to feel a bit alienated from myself because I didn't know who I was in these new situations, you know. And also a lot of new anxieties propped up, but also old anxieties propped up as well. And so I was quite confident in terms of my ability to narrow things down and sort of make sense of reality around me, because I thought about things quite deeply, and so as a result I could sort of map how my behavior was being influenced by certain past influences or by a present situation. But essentially I was at a position, also given that I changed jobs, which I talked about previously, whereby I'd kind of come to doubt my whole sort of underlying philosophy. I didn't know if I should be the type of person who should just completely find a new paradigm of thinking, or if I should be the type of person who should try to kind of modify or double down on the paradigm I was thinking already. And basically over the past year what I've realized is that essentially my paradigm of thinking was fine, but I think there's a couple of retweaks which needed to occur, and some aspects of myself which I needed to examine in order to really come to terms with that. And so today, I suppose what I want to do is share with you that paradigm, which has helped me tremendously through times when I've been very anxious, when I've been very lost, and I haven't rehearsed it. I made a few notes about it a few days ago in my notebook. I didn't even know if I was going to make a video about it, anything like that. But I suppose I'm doing it like this because I want it to be as organic and as authentic and as real as is possible. And so I'm kind of just trying to just say whatever it is that is going to come to my mind about my underlying philosophical framework, which has helped me sort of deal with a lot of challenging situations, including this one where I was feeling quite lost in my relationship and in my work situation. So this is what the video is about today. So basically, without further ado, essentially, one thing which has helped me tremendously, and this is one really simple thing, is essentially becoming aware of me being triggered in particular situations. And what I'm talking about here is that a lot of the times I find myself in particular scenarios, and what I experience is that when I enter a situation, that particular situation or that particular person prompts some response in me, and that leads to a sense of anxiety or feeling small or feeling a bit attacked and wary, basically. And so that I would call as a trigger point. And it could be anything. I mean, if you think about your own particular life, I'm sure you can think of situations where you enter, or when you think about it, or once you're there, it triggers you and you get a bit anxious. It triggers your fight or flight response in you, you know. And so I'm talking about these situations which lead to triggers. And my underlying philosophy, which has helped me tremendously in the past, has been about becoming aware of these triggers. So that's step number one, essentially, is to become aware of these triggers. Now, why is it that I'm doing this? For a while, I basically did it so that I didn't have to suffer anymore. And I think suffer by my own thoughts or my emotions, by my own anxieties, or go into phases of depression, which is incredibly painful. You get a sense of alienation, but then that becomes so much larger when you start going in yourself more and more and more, and you start feeling more and more isolated. So essentially, I started sort of learning about this stuff, or becoming interested in this stuff, which is to do with my psychology and meditation and Buddhism and all of that, and spirituality, or New Age spirituality, so that I could come to terms with who I was as a person, and so that I didn't have to be in pain anymore. And also, if possible, I could find some kind of way of helping others too. Now, there was an element of narcissism there and ego there. I accept that, understand that, and it's about trying to come to terms with that also. But I think the aim to do this, or moving towards this, I think is a noble endeavor, and so as a result, I've kind of always been involved in it in one way or another, but I became more acutely involved in it over the past 2-3 years, i.e. becoming aware of my trigger points and trying to understand why is it that I'm being triggered. Recognizing that there are trigger points, but then trying to understand why is it that I'm being triggered, what are the causes behind that, and trying to come to terms with that, so that I don't have to keep going in that same situation and then suffering again and again and again for no reason, you know. What I've done generally in these situations is I become aware of my trigger point. Point B is that essentially I try to sit with what it is that I'm feeling, and I try to listen to myself. And so even as I speak to you right now, I try to listen. I kind of go in and I try to listen to what it is that's happening within me, and I listen to that. And as I listen to that, I can generally sense some kind of emotion, some kind of voice, which is kind of at the background of my mind, kind of just working. And like, you can try this for yourself. It's kind of like listening into yourself and listening to your inner thoughts, listening into how you're feeling vulnerable. And there is an element of motion which is within you, and as you begin to do that, you may be able to sense some particular emotion in your body, and coupled with that, you may be able to sense some kind of voice or some kind of emotion or feeling or thought or series of thoughts as they're occurring within you. And so when you're triggered, maybe not in that particular situation, but subsequently, you could just sit with yourself. Or maybe even if you're walking, you could just notice what is the narrative which is happening within you in that particular moment. And as you become aware of that, you begin to see or notice certain streams of thought. And as you become aware of those streams of thought, you'll be able to really see that which is driving your emotions. So the idea here is that you can feel a particular emotion, for example, anxiety, nervousness, anger, whatever it is, joy, it could be anything, but I'm focusing more on the negative emotions right now. But those emotions are going to be heightened, or they're going to keep looping or repeating themselves in this circular motion where you keep going on it again and again, when you have a narrative, an underlying belief or thought process, which is basically cementing that or amplifying that or keeping it in motion. And so what I'm saying is that the second step is that if you become aware of whatever that narrative is in the background by looking within, listening within, I would say, just being a kind of curious listener to what's going on inside of your mind, and how is that's impacting your emotions, i.e. how you feel in your body. If you become aware of that, then you know what that narrative is which is actually dictating your emotions, and you become aware of that. And that's really interesting then, because now you know the underlying thoughts, or at least some of those thoughts, which are basically dictating your emotions. And that's point number 2. Point number 3 is that as you sit with this and you begin to recognize that this is what I'm feeling, this is what I'm thinking, and that's what I'm feeling as a result of that, you then should try to find an expression or an outlet for expressing that. And that could be through someone you know, or it could be through writing something and then hopefully maybe discussing that with another person who cares for you, who's open, who'd be able to listen to you. And then using that outlet to understand whatever it is that you're feeling in that particular moment when you are listening into yourself, to express that more fully, either through discussion or dialogue with another person who you're close to, or by simply writing that. I would say there has to be some kind of expression, because by merely listening in, you won't really be able to understand it. That's second in the process. The third thing is that you have to find an external expression, because when you do, that clarifies things. You'll be able to see certain trends and patterns. And then, I think when you do that, what you recognize, and what I generally recognize, is that generally there's some particular bias, some misperception which we have about perceiving reality, about perceiving the intentions of other people, of perceiving what a particular situation means for you, i.e., what is it telling you about yourself. Essentially, a lot of the times when I'm suffering, and I think maybe other people are suffering, are times when you go into a particular situation, and then that particular situation makes you think about yourself in a particular way. So it's to do with you. The thoughts which are causing you pain are to do with you. It's about how you're perceiving yourself as a result of what you think some other people or situation is insinuating about you. So you become aware of that. You start listening to that. What is it that's saying to you in that particular moment? What is it that voice, those series of emotions, narratives are saying to you about you as a person? Become aware of that. You're aware of that. You're expressing that. And I think what you may notice is that the situation which has been causing you so much anxiety and harm in the past is the thing which is actually within you. It is how you are perceiving yourself in that particular situation. You think it may be to do with another person, it may be to do with a situation, but that situation or person is merely a trigger point in terms of prompting a particular series of thoughts which you have about yourself. And it prompts that, and then you think that, and that's the thing which is causing you so much pain. So if you become aware of those thoughts, you listen to those thoughts, you become aware that they're there, and then you start writing those, or you express those to another person you know, you become aware that those thoughts are actually maybe not as objectively true as you may have previously thought. They are underlying narratives which have existed in you, but they're not the truth. And you can verify that, especially if you're close to people. I mean, this is something which I verify in my relationship or with my friends numerous occasions, where I've thought they've insinuated something about me, but they haven't. They've simply expressed opinions, or they've just expressed how they were feeling, and I thought that this means that, and this is I found with my parents as well, and I've thought that this is what they think I am, or this is what they are insinuating. But actually they're not insinuating anything, they're just being themselves. And what's being insinuated is the narrative which is within me. And that's the thing which is insinuating particular things. That's the thing which is causing me harm. So I have to become aware of that and come to terms with the fact that this is the thing which is causing me tremendous pain. This is a good general rule of thumb. I'm not saying this applies to all. I'm not saying this is a fix-it for everything. But I found that when I actually apply this practice in my day-to-day life, it's helped me tremendously as a person. And so I hope that you can go and practice this. It's about becoming aware of how you are thinking about yourself and recognizing that those narratives which exist within you are not ultimately reality. And you can do that, I'm repeating myself now, but you can do that by simply asking someone who you love and who you're close to, and by saying, hey, did you mean that? Is this what you were implying? And they probably will tell you this is not what they're implying. And then it may come in and say, no, they're lying, or something like that. That's more of the narrative, because you're harming yourself, and there's become a habit of thinking about yourself in a way which is not kind, which is not considerate, which is not compassionate. It's harsh and brutal and mean and malicious. Become aware of that voice. Recognize that that voice is not truth. It's not objective reality. It's a narrative which exists within you. And then externalize it. Express it to someone who you love. Write it down. But share it definitely, because in the act of sharing it, you will release it from yourself. And this is something which has helped me tremendously. This is something which has helped me understand myself more. It's made my life tremendously calmer. And so this is, I suppose, my underlying philosophical framework, or at least one of them, which I use regularly. It's not really a philosophy, is it? It's more like a tool which I use. And it's been tremendously beneficial. So in today's video, I'd like to share that with you. And I hope you've enjoyed this. I've certainly enjoyed making this. And yeah, I think try this out. See what you think. See if you can recognize that situation or person triggered something in you. You thought it was insinuating one thing about yourself. Usually a lot of harsh interpretations, feelings. And see if you can recognize that actually that situation might be to do with how you're perceiving yourself and how you're speaking to yourself, and recognize that, externalize that, express that. And I'm telling you, you might be able to laugh at it, at that voice or narrative in due time, smile at it, not take it too seriously. And in doing so may feel tremendously freer and lighter and calmer as a person. So that's the video for today, and I will see you guys next time.